welcome back, everyone, to another live edition of Veteran Nation. And hope you enjoyed last week. We had the discussion with the William from the History Homos podcast. I'm going to be on their show for this next episode. I'll be talking with them. They asked me if I would come on and talk about military history. But there's a lot of things happening in the news right now. So I do want to bring aboard my co-host, TC Pearson. TC, how are things up there in the Great White North? You thawing out yet? Oh, we don't have him
Juan
just
hasn't.
yet. There you
Oh,
are.
there we go. There we are. Yeah, Juan. I didn't realize we were starting so early, and then I walk into you saying you're going to be on a podcast talking about military history, and I wasn't aware that they did military history books in crayon.
They do. They do. In fact, we are. I think the topic that we're going to be talking about is the Falklands War, which I always found very interesting. There's a couple of wars out there that I think people are very. They're not studied enough. And the Falklands War, I think, is one that we absolutely should be doing a lot more study. Even though it was a very short war, it was two very, I would say, modern day militaries fighting each other. So there's a lot of lessons learned that we could take out of that for, current conflicts.
Modern day?
Oh, yeah. We had submarine warfare. We had, there was, what do I say, jet dogfighting. There was
jet
air.
dogfighting. You see a lot of dogs made out of jets, Skipper.
Well, dogfighting is a skill. It is a skill. We proved in Vietnam that if we're not teaching it frequently, it gets lost like every other skill. So,
no, I just got a kick out of how you said it. It sounded funny. Jet dogfighting.
Jet dogfighting.
I was thinking you've been watching.
Juan's got to love that jet dogfighting.
What's jet dogfighting? Which just brings up what's that cartoon that all the little kids love right now with all the dogs that
Paw Patrol?
I don't know. Yeah, Paw Patrol. It's just not picturing a dog with a jet on its back.
Jetpack.
The British and the Argentine Air Forces have brought canine services to an all new level. They have mounted rockets to the back of their dogs and given them guns to chase each other in the air. So
it'll be a fun discussion. Yeah, they're both two guys out of the UK. So I think we're going to have some.
I have an Argentine Mauser.
A what?
I have an Argentine Mauser. An Argentine Mauser.
Oh, okay. For some reason, I thought you were talking like some type of bird or something. I was like, what?
I have an Argentine Mauser. Yeah, bought it when I was stationed at Fort Bragg. Fell in love with it. It's just a hair bit bigger than a 30-06. Yeah, it's all original. It's got everything but the cleaning. The cleaning rod is the right cleaning rod. It's just not the serial numbered cleaning rod. So everything on it's serial numbered. It's got it's bolt action. It's like silk. I could go take it out of the safe right now. I haven't touched it in 2 years. I could go take it out of the safe right now and action that silk. I mean that bolt action, and it'd be like sliding across silk. You know what that's like, right, Skipper? Sliding across silk. Well, it's beautiful. It's 7.65 by 5.4. It's beautiful. When the round leaves the barrel, it sucks the eyeballs out of your forehead. It's like shooting them. It's like shooting an artillery piece.
It sounds great. Eyeballs out of my forehead. Designed and built by people who had absolutely no problems with residents of Israel.
Well, yeah, and ironically, no, it was designed by it was designed specifically for the Argentine army by the Mauser family and hand built in the Mauser factories in Germany. It's got the Argentine coat of arms on it. It's a great gun. I mean, seriously, it's one of those that everybody's like, oh, you should go get the stock refinished, and you should get this really nice scope on it. And I'm like, if I'm going to put anything on there, I'm going to put a scout. I'm going to put a mounted scope on there because that's with a long eye relief, because that's the way they were designed. They weren't designed for, and that's what they carried into battle. A
Mhm.
lot of the Argentine military carried that exact rifle into battle, which is what gave them, a fighting chance against the Brits, because they could reach out from a very, very long ways away with iron sights
Mhm.
and take on the Brits, because that's a hefty round. I don't know if anybody's familiar with the 30-06, but it there again, that round is a hair bit bigger than a 30-06, and it does damage.
There was a reason why we used the M1 Garand for so long, and a lot of it was the
Did you
30-06
say
round.
the Did you say the Garand?
Garand. Garand. Sorry.
Folks, this is why we are a nonprofit show.
And trust me, we make no profit.
No profit.
Speaking of
It's
guns,
and that's why all the other shows are sponsored by mypillow.com. And we are not.
use promotion code RAM. Speaking of
Hmm.
guns, I just got a little bit more free out here in the United Socialist Republic of California.
Guns?
Not those guns, illegal guns that are now legal. Um, so yeah, the
No, 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 no.
for
Oh
right
no,
now,
no, 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 no.
for right now, yes, the handgun, what the Unauthorized Handgun Act here in California has been deemed unconstitutional
That's
by a federal judge. It
that's
will be
that's a double
appealed.
entendre.
It will be appealed.
It is an unauthorized handgun act. I will agree with that.
Yeah, and it had what it did was it put this whole list, and it said these handguns you can buy, and anything not on this list you can't buy. But everything that was built before 19 already being manufactured before 1999 was grandfathered in, so you could still buy those. Just any newer guns you couldn't buy because, well, it doesn't have these three things, and it had to have these three things. Well, here's what's funny: 20 years later, there is no handgun on the market that sells all those three things, and the big one is the micro printing on the round, so they can track what gun shot the round. Um, it was, you know, very or what do I say? I don't want to say advantageous, like ambitious of the state to think that they could actually get that. But here we are, 20 years later, not one gun would be legal through that law, except for those that were grandfathered in. And the federal judge said, yeah, this is absolutely a violation of the text, tradition, and history of the Second Amendment, which, since New York v. Bruin, that is now the basis on which they're supposed to evaluate that. So I'm sure it's going to get appealed. There's an injunction. It's going to be 14 days from yesterday. So if they're going to seek a stay of that injunction within these 2 weeks, I would imagine. And but if they don't, we can buy whatever type of handguns are on the market.
That's you know, I wish we could just get back to the purism of not having to have an argument about what the Bill of Rights, especially within the Constitution, meant, because it's literally the only topic. It's the only topic that we have this conversation about. Now there are other places we should be having that conversation, with the Bill of Rights. You know, what is an unreasonable search and seizure?
Mm-hmm.
What is actually a warrantless search? I've got some I'm going to be having on my show. I'm going to be having a couple of friends that are one's a member of the House of Representatives, a freshman member of the House of Representatives, and the other one's a freshman member of the Senate. They're both now in the minority, um, because Minnesota has gone full on Marxisota, and it, in the House are debating ending the authorization to do no knock warrants, and I I agree. I think they need to end. I don't think a no knock warrant actually meets the definition of what a warrant is.
Yeah, I would
And
absolutely agree with that. Um, in fact, I just
we see
posted.
time and again across the U.S. they're just dangerous. They're just absolutely dangerous, and um, it's terrifying to me. And now this one friend said, "Hey, like I think we should talk about it. Let's I'm gonna come on. We're gonna be doing midterm break anyway, so I think we should. I'd love to come on talk. Do updates about the legislation, and also let's have this conversation." And now my reason for it is different than the leftist reason for wanting to end it. The leftists are trying to make it about race and ethnicity and all just stupid things that aren't viable, reasons. But like, hey, look, if they're gonna push to get it eliminated, I'm like, yeah, back them. I'm gonna, whatever their reason is, I'll back you guys on this one. So anyway, you were saying you just saw what
Oh,
something about no knocks?
yeah, I just saw in West Virginia they did a no knock warrant on a misdemeanor, which I don't know why you would ever need to do a no knock warrant on a misdemeanor, and they went into a house.
The whole point of a no knock is because allegedly you're dealing with a violent felon who could hurt you.
This was this from my understanding of the search warrant, because it was a search warrant that they were executing, not an arrest warrant, but a search warrant, and it was about pictures that were on a computer or something,
Mm,
and a guy who was
yeah, civil rights attorney. So the civil rights attorney just did. He's representing the victim in this situation.
yes, yes, civil rights attorney on YouTube, yeah, and
Yeah,
they shot this young man. They were there for pictures that this guy's uncle had
which
evidently
would
had
have
in his
been which
possession.
would have been if the indication in the conversation that he had, well, what he was saying, well, obviously it would have risen probably to a felony level, but still it's not a violent crime.
Yeah.
And there's in this household is no history of violence. This family has no history of violence. The person that was shot has no history of violence. And they
Yep.
tried to say he came at him with a hammer,
Yep.
with a with a hammer. Yet the couch where he was sleeping is blood soaked.
Yeah.
Blood, like literally blood soaked. And they upgraded
And
it
there's no
to a
splatter on
no
the wall,
knock.
so how could he have been standing, shot, and there's nothing on the wall?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, they they upgraded it to a no knock, and it's really kind of what it's come down to is and I was saying this while he was doing his commentary in the video, is that, well, we've got a SWAT team, we gotta use them for something.
And and here's
That's
what's
what it's
funny
come down
about
to.
that. I don't know if you noticed, because civil rights attorney does a lot of other videos and stuff. The West Virginia State Police is currently under investigation by the Department of Justice, and the governor has had to give
Well,
specific
yeah,
orders to the commandant of the state police to make sure that no evidence is destroyed.
right. I mean, well, when you have the Department of Justice investigating, it couldn't possibly go wrong.
Well, I've seen where the DOJ does have some good investigators investigating local police. Those aren't really the most sexy
Yeah,
cases, so and they're normally the least political as well. Um, so
did
I'm
you
at
just
least
use the
hopeful.
word sexy in our stream?
Yes, we're not going to talk about CBT tonight.
Please. You might need it. I'm gonna need it after hearing you use the word sexy in our stream. Um, well, it's I did a stream last night, and I, had pointed out that here locally, uh, a sheriff, one county over, we're rural Minnesota, southeast quadrant of the state, and one county over in Mower County. Back in November, the sheriff was accused of being drunk on duty,
Mhm.
like 3 o'clock in the afternoon, walking around and clearly inebriated. His uh, staff recognized it. A captain, I think it was from the city police department, recognized that he was drunk. He was in uniform. He was carrying his weapon, and the city of Austin, that kind of handled the investigation, so it wasn't being investigated, obviously, by the sheriff's office because who wants to go after the boss? Just decided not to do anything with the clear charges of being under the influence and carrying a weapon, which in
Hmm.
Minnesota is unlawful.
Yep.
It's unlawful to have any alcohol in your system at all and be brandishing a weapon, or not even brandishing, but carrying or in possession of a weapon in public. You don't get much more public than a public office
Hmm.
in uniform, and they will not respond to any questions about this. And so, yeah, I I like to see investigations happening, but the problem is that you just never know what it's investigations by the state investigating another level of the state that's investigating another level of the state. You just never know what you're going to get. You
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
you,
They're not independent.
you,
In fact, I put out for those of you that follow us on YouTube, I put out a YouTube short this morning about Fort Hood. I don't know if you followed, but we have another dead female soldier at Fort Hood, and another one who had sexual harassment complaints already in the system. And it's like, when is Congress going to step in and do something? Because it's been left up to the DoD. We still have dead soldiers at Fort Hood, and the bodies are piling up. When are they going to do something?
uh I think it's going to take. I want to say this carefully. They're not going to step up and do anything until it reaches the level of something that looks like domestic terrorism.
Yeah.
Really, I mean, they're just not. Because I mean, go back. So you're talking about Fort Hood, and what was it, 2 years ago when the last soldier that had the sexual harassment
Vanessa
complaints
Guillen.
that she filed ended up dead? Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I think it was 2 years ago, right? That
Yeah,
got
yeah,
swept under
roughly.
the. I mean, it. Yeah, 'cause it. I mean, people were aware of it, but it didn't make the news like it should have. And so you go back far enough, and the only other thing that you've heard coming about from that was the Fort Hood shooter.
Mm-hmm. And this
And
happens because the people involved are normally the people who are being allegated against or have previously had their own
mhm.
allegations. So they've, the investigation previously was unfounded. So it's, oh, no harm, no foul. Now they're gaining in rank, and now they're the ones in charge of actually doing something. And of course, they're not going to do anything. These are the same ones who got away with it. They should be Congress right now should be forming a congressional committee specifically on Fort Hood. Specifically on Fort Hood.
I think Congress should go to Fort Hood. Just all of
Absolutely.
them. Just move them all down there. Make them live in the barracks.
Make them get sexually harassed.
Have you? What is it with you today? I'm just.
I was looking at pictures of Lauren Boebert before. No, I'm joking. I think I think Juan's gonna have a heart attack.
Juan's
He's
done.
like, well, we can't monetize
Juan's
this
done.
episode. Oh, we're gonna
If
drive
you
him to
put
drink.
MTG and Bobert and AOC in a room together, you wouldn't have a bad calendar. I mean, as long as AOC doesn't open her mouth, it wouldn't make a bad calendar.
Instead of the glamorous ladies of wrestling, it's the glamorous ladies of Congress.
Glack?
Oh, actually,
Glock?
one of our viewers has a good comment here. Sue just said, or we should just send the congressman's kids there. Yeah, let's do that because once their kids are now dealing with it, suddenly, they're paying
I
attention.
bet I know who. I bet I know which Sue that is.
Super fan.
Yeah.
We should allow, maybe, yeah, we should allow people to be super fans. I think we could
Well,
do something like that.
we could on our YouTube channel once we have 1,000 subscribers and 4,000 hours of viewing time. So
Okay.
somebody needs to get on the stick about promoting our channel more. One of us.
We have been getting some
One-
very decent growth. So I will say that I neglected it for a
Well, they
good
say that
year.
about fungus too.
Fungus.
They say that about fungus, yeah, get some decent growth.
Same thing with tumors. But on the
Uh,
subject of the military and moving away from bad news, I think we have some good news to discuss.
we 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 do.
Yes, out of
I
Arizona.
think we do. Yeah, I don't know. Did Juan? Did you see the link I sent? Is there a way we can look at it?
See,
Oh, that is the Sioux I thought it was. Yeah, there we go, ladies and gentlemen. Juan, go ahead and
we
bring that in
highly
here.
appreciate the
Leave our
comments.
well, leave my mic on. I don't know about skippers, but and the guard has passed the Arizona State Senate. Um, it is the first Senate in the United States to pass it. I think they have 3 or 4 votes to jump through in the state house to get it to pass. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a huge deal. If we cannot get the federal um, state or the at the in the House or in the Senate to do their jobs, which is to actually demand that a president declare war before we start sending troops overseas. The way that we control the war machine is we refuse to allow our National Guard troops to be deployed without a declaration of war. And as I know, Mike and Juan and others, we all back the troops, we back the vets. We're tired of seeing our boys and girls, and it is our girls now. We're tired of seeing them get sent off to war. And this is a way that we can curtail that. And it's set to go up for a fight in Montana right now. I think Maine's another one of the states that's looking. Maine of all places is looking at being able to do this. So, folks, get a hold of your House representative in your state or your senator in your state. I've got 3 people. No, wait, I got 5 or 6 senators in Minnesota that are ready to back this legislation that did not get into committee this year. But I had Diego Rivera on last week to talk about this legislation, and they're all about embarrassing anybody that votes no and embarrassing anybody that will not let it into committee to be heard. People need to understand this. And my challenge, and Juan, if you want to bring Skipper in again, we can just put us both back up there. Um, my challenge is to everybody on Right America Media and anybody in the New Right Network, uh, especially if you have a show. Take a look at this legislation and tell me you're not in favor of it, and tell me you can't promote it. That's my challenge. Look at the legislation. Look at what it
Mhm.
does.
I think
It will not allow a single National Guard troop to be deployed without a actual congressional declaration of war. We have not declared an actual war since the end of World War II. Yet we have seen thousands and thousands and millions of troops deployed. Thousands and thousands of troops have died and been injured or have come back with such severe PTSD that they're willing to take their own lives.
this is
Every single show on this network should be on board with this.
this is a bipartisan issue. I can see both Democrats and Republicans jumping aboard this. I don't see why you would.
Or jumping against it. Jump because that's one of the things that's been happening is they've been jumping on board not voting for it.
And honestly, my only thing is this is an act right now. It's each state passing its laws. I think that would possibly be challenged. I don't know the constitutionality of it. I would love to talk to someone on the constitutionality. But however, I do think we could actually, if we get the momentum going on this, I believe we could actually make this an amendment to the Constitution and passed via
I'm
ratification of 3/4 of the states.
I am working right now to bring Diego Rivera and the president of Defend the Guard, Dan McKnight. I'm working on bringing Dan on to my show, and then I'm also working on bringing them both on here
Okay.
to our show, then to see if we can get him on to other shows on the network to talk about this. This is important legislation, folks.
Hmm.
I'm not saying this that because I don't think other shows won't talk about this and won't support it. I know they will. I know the shows on this network that I know how much they care about our vets. I know how much they care about our troops. Um, but I want to see all of our brothers and sisters on the network talking about this because we have got to make this come alive here in the US. And what better group of people? I know it sounds so foreign to people, because yeah, I get it. We're traditionally a conservative network. I
Hmm.
mean, Right America Media. We're not just right, we're also right.
Juan, write that down. New slogan.
I I know we're not just right, we're right,
Timestamp.
right? But I I I know what the people on this network stand for. And it's really hard for people to understand that how in the world is the party that's always been kind of seen as, or not the party, but the philosophical perspective that's always been kind of seen as rah 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 war.
Hmm.
How are all of a sudden are we seeing so many people say no more war? And here's why. Because the party of peace, what used to be the party of peace, the allegedly the Democrats, are the some of the biggest war hawks out there. And these are the
Hmm.
people that back in the 70s and 60s were out there spitting on our troops and and demanding an end to all war, who are now demanding more war. We have the perfect network to advance this into the culture and get this going more than any other network out there. More than any other network. There is not a single neocon, normicon, warhawk that I've met on this network. We might have some variances about how we handle certain things worldwide right now, but there's not a single warhawk on this network because I've listened to almost every show. I've
Hmm.
yet to hear a warhawk. Juan's going to join us. This is exciting.
You already know the cue for me to come in, huh? When I put the three
You put the
boxes
hat
in
on,
the
so
middle, yeah, and I put my hat on, and it's like, okay. So, I got a couple of things. What? This is news to me. We are a conservative network. What are you talking about?
I don't mean conservative like Republican conservative. I just mean traditional values.
Oh, gotcha,
And
gotcha,
yeah,
gotcha. Okay,
yeah,
okay.
yeah.
You almost blew me.
But
Because you know how I am.
that's
You
that.
know how I feel.
No, 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 no. I know exactly. I didn't mean it that way. I meant it as like we're traditional values. We're
No, no,
we're about
I
family.
got
We're
you.
about
Exactly.
you know
Mhm.
doing what's right, and this is what's right.
But you know what? I'm gonna throw something out there because I know you. I know you guys, and I want you to. I want you
I'm
to.
sorry that you know it. That's right.
Yeah, I know. Well, it's kind of difficult, but I'm gonna show you a video, and then you tell me what you feel about that bill after you see this video. Okay?
Oh no, I just don't want to. Well,
No, no. It's hey, this is news. Okay?
is
Hold
this
on.
is this another breaking news story?
No, it's not a breaking news, but
Oh, okay.
hey, okay, here it
It
comes.
can't be if the bureau chief doesn't know.
That's true.
Greetings. We are Ukrainian soldiers, the defense of our homeland and the whole civilization.
On behalf of the United States military and our families, we don't really care. That's your fight.
Yes, that is a perfect clip.
So, do you still
They-
want to do you still want to support that bill? I just want to make sure.
Mm. I think the gentleman that did that TikTok video that you showed us would absolutely 100% support that bill.
I think so.
I
It.
100% support that bill. But that's the thing, one, and that's why I'm glad that you came on. I believe that this network, more than any other network that's out there right now, is geared geared for this because we reach a. I mean, look, what's your youngest? I mean, your youngest host is how old is she now? Is she 18 now?
She's 19. Mm-hmm.
19. Your youngest host is 19, and then you got old farts like you and I on here.
The you was meaning him, right? No, sorry, him, right? The old fart. Is that what you meant?
He's younger than both of us, one.
Oh, jeez. Okay. Yeah, I know.
But I mean, we run across, across all the age categories. People who are impacted by it could be impacted by it personally, and people who have family members that could be impacted by it. And there's so many, like we got Council of Colonels, we've got other vets and supporters of the vet cause and the military out there. This legislation is for lack of better terminology, is a godsend for our ability to take back the control
It's accountability.
No,
from
yeah.
these
I
unilateral
think
declarations of military escalation.
no, yeah, I think you're right, and obviously, I would love to read the bill, right? I'm not going to be like a congressman and then say I'll read the bill after it passes.
We
But,
have to pass it first so we know what's in it,
what's in it,
and then
yeah.
we can know it's the right thing.
Exactly. So, but no, you are correct. And I think one of you mentioned, it was probably you, TC, that we haven't declared war since World War II, and how many wars have we fought, and how many thousands of lives have been lost.
I want
and
to,
Go ahead.
since you're sitting here, I want to throw this out here because this is when I had Diego on last week. It was something that he and I talked about with some detail. I want people to think back to it was just a few days ago was the 20th anniversary of the invasion of Iraq.
Yes.
And prior to that, we had already invaded Afghanistan. And so we're going on 20 plus years since the global war on terror really, really kicked off. In that time, this is going to blow you guys away. Maybe you know this, maybe you don't. In that time, a total of 45% of all troops deployed in the global war on terror have been National Guard troops. 45%. Of that 45%, they have sustained 20% of all the casualties. Not 20% of their 45%, but 20% of all casualties since this war, the global war on terror, started. Think about the disproportionate number when it's 45, and 45% is, clearly almost 50, right?
Mm-hmm.
But that's 45% of all deployments were from National Guard troops. Minnesota hasn't seen a period in that 20 plus years where they haven't deployed National Guard troops at all. At all. Hurricane Katrina hit. You guys will remember this. Juan, you were active. Mike, you were active, I think, at the time. Hurricane Katrina hit. Who was deployed to Louisiana, to New Orleans, for security during Katrina? The 82nd Airborne Division. Why? Because the Louisiana National Guard was deployed overseas, and the 82nd had to be brought in. And their commanding officer, the division commanding officer at the time, had to tell the guys, put your guns down, because they were so geared up for war mentality that they were walking in an area and they felt like they were in hostile country. So when you take all of that, all these states that have had a continuous rotation of troops in and out, in and out, in and out, in and out of war zones, some of them are going and coming back and going again. And I get that happens. But then you think about that 45% of all deployments were coming from the National Guard. That tells us we have a recruitment problem for active duty military. And two, our priorities are all wrong. And then to see that they take 20%, and that's not counting, Juan and Mike, you and I have talked about this before. We don't even count suicides, PTSD related suicides, deployment related suicides, of veterans into that casualty count.
Hmm. And I
But the good
know
news is this is gaining traction.
a lot of viewers who aren't familiar with the military would ask why. And I actually worked for one gentleman, I won't say his name, who was at Manpower at the Pentagon. And the way they deal with manpower is it's kind of like this big shell game as to who's going to go. Well, the reason why they do the National Guard is because now it's more shells, so they don't have to worry about things like R&R. They don't have to worry about dwell time, all these other things that the military has already built into its rules and regulations. That if you've been deployed so much, okay, now you get so much time at home. So that's why they throw the National Guard in there, so that now they can alleviate those problems and move the ball around through the shells a little bit easier. That's why they do it.
Yeah, there's
Yeah.
also a problem with capabilities. Um, when when I first came in 1985, if you remember, that's the middle of the Reagan years, and I know Mike, you don't remember that. You were what, in sixth grade at that point. Uh, but middle of the
I
Reagan
was
years,
15.
yeah. Oh, jeez. Um, hey, hold on a second. You were how old were you?
I was 15.
You were 15? Well, I wasn't that far off, right? I was a 20-year-old second lieutenant
When Reagan left
in
office, I was
1985.
9.
You shut up. So, uh, anyway, um, well, the Reagan years, in the Air Force, it was the the baseline was going to be a 40 fighter wing Air Force, 40.
Right.
The Navy was going to be a 600 ship, combat ship, not support ships,
Yep.
combat ship Navy.
Yep.
And I can't remember how many divisions the Army was going to have at that time, but it was more than the ones we have right now. And but it wasn't until, remember when the wall came down, and at this point I'm going to have to say not the southern border wall. I'm talking about the one in Berlin, right, in which the peace dividend came into
Right.
play, and that's when they started bring out airplanes to the mothball and all that kind of stuff. And so anyway, and it was at that time that they started saying, well, if we have a problem, then we got the National Guard, and we're gonna start using the National Guard. And then uh, when we had that first Iraqi war, that's when really they looked at the
Yep.
guards as, hey, we may actually need to use these people. And if I remember correctly, a lot of units said, well, we're not ready to do that kind of stuff. We're the guard, right?
Yeah.
And right
I
after
mean,
that
and that's when you started to see specialization change too in the
exactly.
National Guard, where you started to see NBC units.
Yep.
And note for those people who don't understand, that's
Mhm.
not a news network. They weren't embedded with reporters. Those nuclear, biological, and chemical units were being pushed into service in the National Guard, and then they were having to train these people up. And I dated a gal in Montana who was in an NBC unit, and she got deployed. Now they ended up doing forward base operation or base operations. So when the unit, the fort that they went to, they were just taking over that fort and operating that fort and keeping things running while the units were deployed, which was a much better option. But we even need to kind of take a step back, and that's why I made the reference to us being a conservative. I mean, a traditional
Yep.
values type network is that we don't we shouldn't just blindly go along. And that was the great thing about this legislation. When I emceed the event in St. Paul here last fall, when I was invited by my friend Travis Bull Johnson on to go do that, and I emceed with another individual, and we had Jesse Ventura came and spoke. We had Scott Horton spoke, the guy who wrote that book. um And we also had people from uh, parties on the left and the left side of the spectrum, and we had conservative Republican types in the spectrum. And this is not a bipartisan issue. This is a multi-partisan issue that we can all get behind, and we the people, regardless of our, you know, things we might disagree on certain perspectives, how we go about doing things. This is one of those issues that we can all get behind. We can end all the wars that we're involved in if the
We
people
should.
just stand up and say enough.
TC, we should, but I'm gonna have to disagree a little bit in the sense that I don't think the environment right now, the political environment per se, I think this is a great thing that this happened, but I think politically, I mean, you look at
It's going to
Congress
be
right
tough.
now,
Absolutely.
it's gonna be
Absolutely
tough
tough.
because now that little video that I put in there in front of you, right? That first part, right?
Hmm.
There's even conservative people saying, "Well, we need to support those," and what
Yeah.
they're gonna say, "Well, we can't support them if the president doesn't have the flexibility to use
Right.
all troops." So it's gonna be it's gonna be tough. It's gonna
I,
be
n-
really tough.
no argument for me, Juan. No argument. But to see it pass in 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 that, today was Arizona. Yeah, Arizona. I'm sorry, my
Arizona.
brain froze. I forgot where it was at. They had to have some votes from Democrats on
Mhm.
that. They had to, and that's what's really big. And the reason I have hope in at least being able to get people united on this one is because back in February, the Rage Against the War Machine, which was specifically geared to having conversations from people all across the spectrums about the American funding of the war in Ukraine, that that literally had people from all spectrums, conservatives, libertarian, Mises level libertarians, people on the left were all there. There were 3 to 5,000 people there. That's the biggest anti-war rally and the most unified anti-war rally that this country has seen since never in my lifetime.
Mhm.
Never in my lifetime.
And I'll say one thing
Go ahead,
about
Mike. You were
this,
going to say something.
because this is a bipartisan issue, but here's the caution. And this is where everybody needs to be involved. This is where they need to talk to their Congress people, their state assembly people, in getting this passed. Also, we have to make sure that they don't politicize this. And I'll give you an example: the PACT Act. The PACT Act was something. It was a bipartisan bill. All of a sudden, then one party started throwing in all these budgetary tricks, and then the other party walked away from it. We have to really hit the hammer home with this, that when it affects our military, we don't play politics with it. We're not going to stand for that. And that's on either side of the aisle. We want a clean bill on this issue.
That's
Very
right.
well said. Very well said.
Yeah, absolutely. Juan, it looks like you have something that might be emotional for us. I don't know if I can handle this.
You know what? It's fortunate or unfortunate, but I got a couple of things that if you guys want me to show, I
That
will show it to you.
I would
So
absolutely.
outstanding. So let's just start with something a little bit lighter, but something that is still, veteran related. You know that on March 29th, which is just about 8 days away from us, from today, it is.
Salute and a little message from my fellow Vietnam veterans. We didn't have a VE Day and we didn't have a VJ Day, and it took them about 50 years to get around to recognizing us. Now we've got the 29th of March, National Vietnam War Veterans Day. And it's important, I think, on a day like this, not to squander it. Let's get out there and let's show folks that most of us, the vast majority of us, came home, dealt with our troubles, got on with our life, and became productive Americans. And for us Vietnam veterans, that mission continues. Hope you have a good time and welcome home.
got to, so we got 8 days. We got to remember and try to push this message out. It is
Absolutely.
Vietnam Veterans Day on the 29th, and we got to remember that. It's I have he probably not gonna hear this, but I have said it so many times. My father-in-law, probably the man that I respect the most in my life. In that whenever I look at him, I feel so small compared to this gentleman who volunteered twice in two different services to go to Vietnam, and and every now and then I see the scars from that, you know. So
Yeah. My uncle
uh,
did 2 tours in Nam. Same thing.
yeah,
And
so
He
even,
went
you
back
know,
that second time.
today, the stuff that we are fighting for as veterans today, we are using the roadmap that they created. We got the PACT Act because they fought for Agent Orange for so many years. So we're still following them and their leadership.
yeah, exactly. Now, on the other hand, I keep telling him he should be 100% disabled. His first tour was with the Air Force. He decided to go with the Army. So something wrong there. So
I do
I'm
have
not. I'm
something that
not.
I'm.
I'm not
that
biting. I'm not biting on that one. I'm
that
not
was for you. That was for you.
biting.
I am gonna
so
pull
so
back the
remember,
curtain of the foundation a little bit and tell you something, Juan. And I want all the
yeah, go ahead.
viewers who are watching to know I'm doing this as well. I'm trying to get some meetings with some board game companies because we're trying to fund Veteran Nation as a nonprofit so that we can help veterans. And one of my ideas, I actually took about an afternoon, was able to write this whole thing up. I have created a veterans disability board game. And if we can find a company that's interested in it, I think a lot of veterans will really enjoy this game. But it's also to bring knowledge to the general public to know what do veterans go through when they're making disability claims and trying to get everything that they're entitled to. What are the roadblocks? How do we shoot ourselves in the foot? All those things. It's a humorous game. It's gonna be pretty fun. But I just wanted you guys to know I have created that, and now we're just trying to find someone who's interested in bringing it to market for us.
Awesome.
It's going to be Barrick's Monopoly. No, Marine Corps Shoots and Ladders.
Candyland.
Cr-
I
Cranes not
specifically
included.
I specifically did not want it to be a Monopoly clone, so it's a little bit different than Monopoly. There is a board you do have to go around, but yeah,
Well, it's
people.
a board game.
Everyone's gonna be trying to get to 100% disabled, much like so many of our veterans out there. And everything that the
So if you
VA has done to you is gonna happen to you in this game. The veterans that
so
I've
if you
told,
pick the Marine Corps game piece, you immediately have a 75% disability. Or
uh, I
Or
will
not.
say this: as a component of the game, there's gonna be a bell, and if you get tinnitus, every time you make a new claim, you have to ring the bell.
Okay. So so if it is a very realistic game, then in other words, this is a game that will never end.
that's exactly
It'll take
true.
multiple turns of playing it. I'll say that it will frustrate some people. For those of us who've been through the process, you're just gonna laugh. You're gonna be like, "Yep, that's the way it goes."
VA Risk.
Yeah. So, oh,
I,
guys, I got
Oh,
another video. I'm sorry.
the only thing I still
No,
have
with
left to
this one?
do is I've got to find an artist to help me design a board.
Excellent.
oh, so I'm glad that you have the entire game ready to go, minus the board.
That is, I don't have artistic ability. I know what I want on it. I just need to find someone who's good at drawing.
Drawing.
Drawing. That's good. Okay, guys.
Oh, yeah.
So,
Lay some more of those
Okay,
Thanks for
so
joining this one. That
this
was
one's
nice.
a little bit long, guys, but you know, this one is one that actually, this video, that deserves to be seen because um, it's a story of one of our brothers that was there when the Afghanistan withdrawal happened.
Okay.
Okay, he went to Congress and he uh, he talked for quite a while, and, you know, and it's gut wrenching, and you know, and I will be doing a disservice if I just put it aside because it is gut wrenching. People need to see this.
Absolutely.
So if you allow me, you know, I think it's about 4.5 minutes long.
I requested engagement authority while my team leader was ready on the M110 semi-automatic sniper system. The response, leadership did not have the engagement authority for us. Do not engage. I requested for the battalion commander, Lieutenant Colonel Brad Whited, to come to the tower to see what we did. While we waited for him, psychological operations individuals came to our tower immediately and confirmed the suspect met the suicide bomber description. He eventually arrived and we showed him our evidence, the photos we had of the two men. We reassured him of the ease of fire on the suicide bomber. Pointedly, we asked him for engagement authority and permission. We asked him if we could shoot. Our battalion commander said, and I quote, "I don't know," end quote. Myself and my team leader asked very harshly, "Well, who does? Because this is your responsibility, sir." He again replied he did not know, but would find out. We received no update and never got our answer. Eventually, the individual disappeared. To this day, we believe he was a suicide bomber. We made everyone on the ground aware. Operations had briefly halted, but then started again. Plain and simple, we were ignored. Our expertise was disregarded. No one was held accountable for our safety. About 1730, Staff Sergeant Darren Hoover, friend and mentor, came to get me from the tower to go help find an Afghan interpreter in the crowd. We found the interpreter and his brother, born with American passports. They told us of 5 family members still in the canal. I stayed there waiting for the family members standing against a 2-foot canal wall. 10 minutes passed. Then a flash and a massive wave of pressure. I'm thrown 12 feet onto the ground, but instantly knew what had happened. I opened my eyes to Marines dead or unconscious lying around me. A crowd of hundreds immediately vanished in front of me, and my body was catastrophically wounded with 100 to 150 ball bearings now in it. Almost immediately, we started taking fire from the neighborhood, and I saw how injured I was with my right arm, completely shredded and unusable. I saw my lower abdomen soaked in blood. I crawled backwards roughly 7 feet because I thought I was still in harm's way. My body was overwhelmed from the trauma of the blast. My abdomen had been ripped open. Every inch of my exposed body, except for my face, took ball bearings and shrapnel. I tried to get up but could not. Laying there for a few minutes, I started to lose consciousness when I heard Chaz, my team leader, screaming my name as he ran to me. His voice calling to me kept me awake. When he got to me, he dragged me to safety and immediately started triaging me, tying tourniquets on my limbs and doing anything he could to stop the bleeding and start plugging wounds with the help of the other Marines. I was awake through most of it, screaming, moaning, and cursing. I ask you to please ask me about getting shot at the tower in Abbey Gate and how no one wanted my report post-blast. Even NCIS and the FBI failed to interview me, asked me to elaborate on my ordeal post-blast, and asked me about this one little girl and her family that I reunited. Our military members and veterans deserve our best because that is what we give to America. The withdrawal was a catastrophe in my opinion, and there was an inexcusable lack of accountability and negligence. The 11 Marines, 1 sailor, and 1 soldier that were murdered that day have not been answered for. Thank you for giving me this opportunity.
Yeah, I apologize if this was kind of hard for some of our viewers, but in I was kind of conflicted if should I show this or not. But you know what, that gentleman right there, Sergeant Vargas, I mean, he had the courage to go and to Congress, and he's fighting a battle, and I want to make sure that he that whatever we can do to show his message,
Absolutely.
we can, and maybe at 8:57 p.m. Eastern time, if at least one person see that message, I think we done part of our job. It's still a long way to go, but you know, uh, accountability. I mean, there's so much to unpack on that message.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
That's right.
he had uh, that terrorist in his sights, and he couldn't get clearance to shoot. You know, so let's start with that one. Um, let's, I mean, and then we can finish with, those 13 brothers and sisters have not been answered to yet.
Mm-hmm.
We pay. They take our tax money and we pay to have this standing military, and we pay to have them go and do things. That's what the military does. We just have to be honest. The military is trained to kill and destroy. And then we put them in a situation where we tell them their job is to kill and destroy. And then we tell them, don't kill, don't destroy. Because it could look bad. And that's one of the reasons why, since I've been out of the military, my fondness, and I don't even like to use that word, but my fondness, if you will, for the war machine has continuously just eroded, because it's been a long time since we've even had a moral cause. But worse, it's been a long time that since even if somebody felt they had the moral cause, that they had the backing to do the moral thing. And that's what we saw there in this clip was he had the moral cause, but he didn't have the backing.
Mm-hmm.
And if Marines, soldiers, airmen, sailors, whatever, if you can't do the one thing that every single service member at the Corps is trained to be, which is an infantryman, if you can't do that one thing, and when the crap hits the fan, then what are we doing?
Mm-hmm.
And why? And it's gotten way too easy for the powers that be to tell somebody, and Juan, this in the Air Force. You've seen a change in how the Air Force fights war, even since, while you were in and to now,
Mm-hmm.
that there are these young computer jockeys sitting thousands and thousands and thousands of miles away, removed from the reality and the humanity of their mission. And that has affected even those guys and gals. We're all affected by this. And it's time to see it stop. Somebody wants to come here and hurt us, they should come and be in the teeth of the most vicious fighting machine in the world. If they want to come here and hurt us, that fighting machine should be there. But we shouldn't be grinding up our own kids in the ways we have been for the last decades. And what I saw in that video was somebody who, yeah, physically was ground up, but the mental and emotional turmoil is far more of a meat grinder than any combat zone can ever be when you walk away from it like that.
Mike, I'm going to ask you a question.
Yeah.
Because this particular question has been asked in different shows, and as I'm producing the shows and directing the shows, I've been very interested in the answer. So I'll say Tom from down the road, 18-year-old kid, graduates from high school, and he knows about you being, a Marine and all that kind of stuff, and hey, he comes to, hey, Mr. Mike, I'm thinking about joining, joining the Marines. What would you do? What would you say?
Actually, second time I got asked this question today, because I put the video out about Fort Hood, and I would say definitely look at all of your options and know what the problems are before you get in. Know what you're getting into. And don't worry about boot camp, things like that. You'll make it through that as long as you are tough enough, and they'll build you up for that. But what's hardest is maintaining the discipline afterwards when you see things around you that you know are not right. That's when your courage will get tested. This is another example of that. The murkiness of the rules of engagement put them in a bad situation with this. But none of the people making the decisions ever had their necks out on the line, and they're not being held accountable even today. So I wouldn't say no. I would say know what you're getting into.
Okay. GC.
What would I say to somebody joining the military today or the army?
Or willing to join, or thinking about joining.
Well, I had two ways I'd approach it depending on how well I know the person. What in your heart is telling you that this is the right thing for you to do? Is it this loyalty to your family because you've come from a military background that everybody, I used to make the joke when we'd watch Cops, and they'd always have the young guy on Cops. He'd be like, my dad's dad was a vet, and he got out and he became a cop. And so my dad's dad became a cop, and my dad's dad became a cop, and then my dad became a cop. So I decided when I got out of the military, I was going to become a cop. And you see that a lot with people in the military. Everybody in my family has served, and I feel like I owe it to them. And I'd ask them, in that regard, is what your great grandfather, and now maybe your great great grandfather, what they did in World War II, is that the same as what we're doing now? Have you really thought about it? Have you really, really thought about it? And then the other one is, if you're doing it just for the college money, may I offer you a ride to a trade union? And I would say it tongue in cheek, but seriously, if the guy looked at me, he said, "What do you mean?" I said, "Well, there are HVAC and plumbing contractors and construction contractors and masonry trade, not just unions, but just tradesmen looking for people And they'll pay you and train you, and you'll have less risk. The closest you'll get to PTSD is the boss yelling at you over a cold cup of coffee in the morning, and you're going to have a skill that you're going to be able to take with you for the rest of your life. The military promises you a lifetime of skills. What they don't tell you is that the skill that you probably are going to have to learn is how to cope with your PTSD. That's the skill. And I would much rather see our recruiting numbers down because we're putting people out into the workforce learning a trade than getting promised the idea of a free education. Those are the two ways I'd handle that.
I have found out that well, it seems the trend for military guys is you would have asked that question 15 years ago, maybe 20 years ago, 25 years ago. I don't think neither of the three of us sitting right here would have had any. Um, we would say, of course, join the military. We would have not hesitated.
Definitely would have answered differently, yeah.
Would have answered differently. Now we see what has gone. I mean, from my experience, so uh, the wars that I remember, not that I was part of, but that I was actually in the military, but this nation fought. We went to started with Grenada, Panama, the first Gulf War, second Gulf War, Afghanistan. Um, I mean, there's been more times in my career, in my 28 years in the Air Force, there were more times of us being on a war than there was actually peacetime. Uh, at least it felt that way. In I'm gonna say in the first 14 years, actually, even more, uh, I supported every single endeavor we got involved in. And now I look back and it's like how foolish I was at that time. How little did I know? And it is very very hard for me to come with a yes answer that I would try to lead a young American fellow or girl or lady into the military because it has become not what the military is supposed to be.
Yeah.
Right.
And then after that, there's no support. I seen the lack of support for the people that they wanted to bring in so much, and so it's really really hard. And in fact, I did this last week, and one of our brothers, one of our brothers in this network, he was having the same hard time answering the question, and he said, but at the end, I think you know, I would probably lead that young fellow to give him the words of encouragement to do. And then I wrote, as I always often do, right, when I write notes, right, and I wrote the note, but what if it was your son?
Hmm.
Right.
And that completely stopped them. you know, it's it's just like he really couldn't answer the question at that point. It was like,
Yeah.
whoa, so there's something wrong, you know, with what's happening.
It's
So
it's so easy, Juan, I think, for so many people to sit here, and I'll just use the current event, the current war du jour, you know, to hype up the idea of fighting this fight, and for a lot of people our age and older, Juan, a lot of what's going on in the Russo-Ukrainian situation is really ultimately about kind of this ingrained hatred for the Soviet Union as the evil empire. A lot of us grew up underneath that, and so it's very hard for us to see Russia as not the evil empire that the Soviet Union was. And so it's very easy for people to, jump on board and go, oh yeah, we got to stop them, those darn Russian commies. Uh,
If not, you're a
y-
Putin lover.
right. If you you can't hate them both. It's impossible.
Exactly.
Yeah, I can't hate Zelensky and Putin and both those, and admit that they're both wrong. You got to one's got to be good and the other one's got to be bad, and it's whatever side we're backing. But it's so, and I think there is a detachment a lot of times because, frankly, a lot of people who have that mindset, who maybe would be kind of traditionalists like us, they don't have anything to risk because they don't have kids that are fighting age, and maybe their grandkids aren't fighting age yet, and they just see it as, well, but there's nothing to risk here. We're never going to have a draft. We're never going to have to worry, we're never going to have to worry about them going to war because we got promised we're not going to war. But, just last week we had a drone downed, and Lindsey Graham's response was, we need to start shooting down Russian fighter jets. So don't
Yeah.
tell me that your kids can't go to war. So I love that you really brought it home and made it personal and said, but what if it is your kid?
Yeah.
I'll tell you this. If I had to do everything over, I would have done everything except for this. I understand that I am a pain in the ass. I get it. I've been that way for
Agreed.
a long time. And I've got plenty of Marines who can attest to that. If I had to do over again, I would have been a bigger one. Because if anything, it made me more principled. And I thought I was pretty principled when I came in. And now that I'm helping veterans, I'm even more principled and I'm an even bigger pain in the ass.
And Mike, that's an excellent point or excellent statement. If I would have to do it again, would I do it again? And I think, well, I'm going to speak for myself. If I would have to do it again, oh heck yeah, I would do it again. But I'm talking about the time that I did it.
Mhm.
Just
Right
would have done
now,
it different. Yeah.
yeah, right now, I'm not sure if I could do that.
Yeah.
My views are completely different to what the military's views are, and what their values
Yep.
are completely different. If you ask me to do it again in 1985, where do I sign up? Where's that time machine, please? And of course, I would do a lot of things that would be different, right? But it is hard. And we just mentioned, Mike, you did it first. You mentioned about the drones, and then TC, you just mentioned the last week's event, right? So, and for those of you that don't know, we do have some excellent writers in Right American Media. We have a section that we write articles. It's becoming almost a daily event, and I wanna reference the following article that was written by one of our writers, uh, dated July 20th, 2022, last year. The service with a price on your soul. Okay, and I'm just gonna just read a little bit real quick. Drone crews have launched more missiles and killed more people than anyone else in the military in the past decade.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Yep.
let that sink in for a moment before we proceed. But the military does not count drone pilots as combat troops because they are not deployed, and as such, they seldom get the same recovery periods, mental health screenings as other military personnel receive.
That's right. They do an 8-hour day. They go home. They go to sleep. They come back in. They do it all over again.
Yeah. So,
It's just a 9 to 5 job
And
in the
all the
way that
mental
they treat
stuff.
them, but they don't. Yeah.
and all the mental
You
stuff
couldn't
that
put.
goes with it.
Yep.
You
The
couldn't possibly
Pentagon,
have
they
any
don't
mental.
care.
You could.
Yeah.
You couldn't possibly have any mental or emotional baggage from that. I mean,
Hmm. I'm gonna
how'd you
be
like?
real.
How would you? And I say this to be just completely transparent. How would you like to be the drone pilot who pulled the trigger on that missile that took out the 16-year-old American in Yemen, knowing that you took out a 16-year-old American in Yemen in a cafe, and then get told by the administration, well, we were targeting somebody else. It was just collateral damage.
Hmm.
Yeah, maybe for you, Mr. President, but that drone pilot knows what he did that day. He knows, and he carries that with him every day for the rest of his life. And he's never going to get that kind of help because he doesn't qualify for combat veteran status because he was sitting in an air conditioned room in the dark of a mountain somewhere.
Exactly.
And
Listen,
that
I'm
is
gonna
not me mocking him. That's me saying that's combat.
no, that it is combat. And I'm going to tell you an example. And again, I want people to please go to ramtv.live if you have the opportunity, and then you have to go into the article section and look for July 20th of 2022 for this article. And again, it's a service with the price on your soul. And why I bring that up is because everything that we have mentioned so far, you guys have mentioned so far about drones and all that kind of stuff, I want to give this young man uh, the a little bit of for people to know who he was, what he did, and then what happened to him. Uh, his name was Air Force Captain Kevin Larson. Okay, he grew up in Washington. So imagine this, son of a police officer. So um, uh, the he became a drone pilot and was one of the best. He was assigned to the 867 Attack Squadron at Creech Air Force Base in Nevada. Uh, he flew the heavily armed MQ-9 Reaper. He flew 650 combat missions between 2013 and 2018. He launched over 188 airstrikes. He earned 20 medals for achievement and killed a top man on the U.S. most wanted list. Obviously, we don't know who that was, and we couldn't tell. All this started affecting his mental health. It's
Yep.
not a game, For
No.
people, it is not Top Gun Maverick. If you think that's what it is like, people get affected by doing this. Uh, the pressure, yes, yes. And here's the funny thing. So I don't have to read the whole thing here. And he started asking for help. You know how much help he got?
Nothing. He probably
Exactly.
got disciplined.
Well, I'm you know the stories, and then uh, he started self-medicating to be able to deal with this stuff, and obviously the Air Force caught up with him, and to make a long story short, he left the Air Force without permission, and they started looking for him and all that kind of stuff. Um, because he was not again conventional combat veteran. There was no required psychological evaluations to see what influence in his warfighting experience had with his life and his misconduct. Uh, at his trial, nobody mentioned his 188 classified missile strikes that they never mentioned that. He was convicted because again he started self-medicating and he had drugs and all that kind of
He
stuff.
just broke all the rules, so he deserved to be punished.
Yeah. So to avoid prison, uh, he uh, he left base. He ran. The Air Force put an arrest warrant on him. A warrant for a possible armed deserter under the influence of drugs. Here's where this gets really uh, awful. He was eventually found in a canyon in Northern California. Ironically, the heavily armed police SRT unit that was following him decided to send a drone to locate him, and it did. Larson determined not to go to prison, nor wanted to kill anyone. Look at the drone. He smiled, put the muzzle of his AR-15, and blew his head off. Because the Air Force did not understand that this young gentleman, with all the pressure in his in 188 combat missions, actually 650, 188, he actually shot something and probably killed something or blew up something. Was not considered a combat veteran.
You know, the thing that makes war endable is humanity. And the human nature is, I mean, we can have a lot of conversations philosophically, religiously, whatever, about human nature, but human nature is at some point you look at your fellow human being across the chasm, across the alley in urban warfare. Even pilots will tell you that they're coming in for a strafing run, or they're coming in to lay down, suppressive explosives. Uh, there's a moment of, I can see that human being down there. Even in a split second, we can make eye contact, and I can know what I'm doing. And eventually, the humanity picks picks up, kicks in, and you say, I'm not killing anybody anymore. And when you remove that human contact, as ugly as it is in wartime, when you turn it over to distance and remote control, where all the decision makers are thousands and thousands and thousands of miles away from the person who's thousands and thousands and thousands of miles away pulling the trigger, you lose that human connection. And that's when people start getting really hurt.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what's tragic about how we fight war now. And it's got to stop. We've got to be united in saying enough is enough. We're not doing this anymore. No more damage. No more broken people like Bob, Sue's watching, like Bob and Sue's son Garrett. He's home in Minnesota now, but he's at the VA. Was he wounded in combat? I say he was. Yeah. You maybe didn't see it, but you would see it now in what he did. It's time. We've got to bring him home, and we have to stop sending them. And we can do this if we stand together and say enough is enough. Not one more.
No, absolutely.
Well, guys,
Take us out of here, one.
you want me to liven up the mood a little bit?
Sure.
Throw one lighthearted one at us, and then let's take us out of here.
And then we can go. So.
I love Randy Berwick. All
I
right.
got nothing else to say.
You guys have anything you're plugging?
I don't want to. I would like to, but I'm not today.
Subscribe to our YouTube, Veteran Nation. Get on there. So that
Go to defend and go to Defend the Guard and find out who in your state is supporting this. Do like Juan said, do your own research. Folks, I'm not going to tell you to support something that I don't believe in, but go and do your own research. Defendtheguard.us. Find out who in your state supports it and get on them. Turn the heat up. Turn the heat up.
And
good.
As always, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being worth serving.